Hello, everyone. This is Mike from NovaStar. Today, warmly welcome to join us for the H series launch event. We are very honored to invite our partner George Ray to give us H series product introduction and the training. And he will also release the roadmap of the H series. So then we can invite George Rin to start the H series product introduction and training.
Hi there, everybody. Is the audio okay for everyone? Can you hear me?
We can, everybody's muted.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to check. So my name's George Ray. I work for Evolve here in Orlando, Florida. I'd like to thank the team at NovaStar for inviting me to participate. We have a couple of housekeeping things at the beginning. If you post any questions as we go along in the chat window, Ricky is going to gather those up and we will have a Q&A at the end. And that way you can just type them into the chat and we'll pick them up at the end. Also, for anyone who is interested, there will be a special offer all the way at the end. But you got to stay here and go all the way through the presentation to get in on the special offer. So I only have 124 slides in this slide deck. So, 3 or 4 hours, we should be good to go. So first slide, that's me, that's my email. It's George at Evolve Media Group. I have a live H5 as part of this presentation. So I have one sitting about 3 feet away from me, and we're going to go through, this is some introduction material, and then we're going to go through an overview of actually programming the unit live here on this stream. So moving forward. This is the NovaStar H series, design it your way, and that is really, really true. It's a completely modular system. So how would you normally approach, or how in the past have we approached doing LED screens of varying formats and varying sizes? So typically this is what was done. You would have some kind of screen processor and a number of different LED processors of different makes and models, and they're all scattered all over the place. This is kind of what it would look like backstage or in the inside of an installation cabinet with tons of processors. I've been involved in the 32 600 processors racked up backstage in an exhibit booth. So all those little white UART cables over there on the right, I am intimately familiar with those, as is anyone who built large megapixel displays. You would end up occasionally with this. Literally, this was what I had to work with on the upfronts for a major network for a superhero show with a guy in a red suit who moves really fast, and that's what he looked like. And it took a crew overnight resolving those kind of issues because processors and timing from multiple scalers. Too many devices, cables, compatibility, tearing, we've all been there. So the H series gets rid of these issues. How does it do it? So this is the H series. 5, there's a 9, there's a 15, and there's a 2. It's integrated, completely modular, 4K, 8K, and well beyond 8K, and extremely easy to use. So here is our first generation. You'd have a video processor and a 660 Pro. That combination is the same as basically a VX4S or a Pro HD. So integrating the scaler and the LED control together. Now we're on to the second generation processors, which are on the left, you have the UHD Junior, and on the right, you have an H9. The UHD Junior and the Pro UHD, 4K processors, 16 outputs. The H9 over there, you have 5 4K screen outs. So it's an 8K plus a 4K screen, and inputs are all a la carte. You can choose what input modules you want. It is completely modular. We have here at Evolve, we have quoted and assisted different installation companies with installing several H-series processors, 2s, 5s, and 9s. All of them have different input and output capabilities, and that's the beauty of this modular chassis. Input side, HDMI 2.0 and 1.3, DisplayPort 1.2, 1.1, 3G, and an upcoming 12G input card. DVI, you see the quad DVI inputs there, and those are 4 separate inputs, and also an IP stream input card, which I have in my H5, and we'll go through a little bit. I'm actually taking a real-time RTSP stream into my H5 as a source. On the output side, you have 16 by RJ45 plus the 2 fiber SFPs. The fiber SFPs are part of the NovaStar fiber system, so that would connect up to a CVT 4KS or a CVT 10. Or if you just want all copper, there is a 20 RJ45 output card, and there's also a Multiviewer card. 130 million pixels. So that means that's an H15 that has the capability of 15 MCTRL 4Ks in one chassis. So 4K and beyond, we go way, way, way beyond. On each output card, you have 4 4K layers or 16 2K layers. The layers are dissolving. So that's not 4 layers and that gives you 2 dissolves. That's 4 4K layers, all of which can dissolve to 4 other 4K sources, or 16 2K layers, and that's per output. The interface is all web-based on the control side of the H chassis. So all the layering, image choice, preset management, user management, and admin, that's all done through a very easy to use web interface. Some of the features include input cropping. So input, it's non-destructive input cropping. And also another feature that's very handy is a multi-user, multi-level access. So you have controlled user access, so you can grant permissions to just specific parts of the web interface to specific users. Extremely handy if you have a situation where you have, for instance, volunteers running different types of operations during the week. Presets, you have up to 2,000 presets and a 0 to 1 second customizable transition time. Currently, it's a single transition time for the chassis. So all of your preset transitions are either cuts or dissolves, and they have a single transition time. You have a true multi-viewer. I'm going to switch just briefly over. So this is the multi-viewer on my H-series processor. So that's an HDMI output coming over to my Blackmagic switcher and going out to you all. So the multi-viewer is available as an HDMI. It's also available as a web stream in the web interface. So anyone who is hooked up to the web interface can get the multi-viewer. And you can also, it's just a regular 1920 1080 at 60 HDMI port. If you need to turn that into another signal to send somewhere, absolutely not a problem. Fiber output, again, the SFPs, which are on the 16 port output modules. You've got up to 10 kilometers with single mode SFPs, and they attach to existing CVT 4Ks or to the new CV10. Each pair of fibers is 8 output port channels. The H series supports the low latency mode, the NovaStar low latency mode. It has sync, it has Genlock, including multi-frame. So things like 24 frame, 2398, 5997, 2550, whatever your frame rate, it's pretty much in there. It supports HDR and it supports 3D if you've got a 3D application. The biggest ones I'm starting to see are doing things like 24 and 48 for virtual film production sets, and HDR mode also in like the virtual film world. And low latency is, usable everywhere. Here are the chassis, the 2, the 5, the 9, and the 15. The numbers are how many rack units the frame takes up. So the 2 is literally a 2RU. In 2RU, you can pack 2 output cards, 3 or 4 input cards, depending on how you configure how many output cards you've got. So think of that as, and all of these inputs scale. So, you could put 3 input cards and 2 4K outputs in 2RU for an installation that would take up 8 or 10 RU with scalers and MCTRL 4Ks, huge space savings, integrated package, and a single Genlock, a single web control for all of those outputs. These are some demo cases from NovaStar of different applications for the H5. Multi-screen, like the bottom photo, it excels in because it is a screen switcher in front of the LED. You can bring a single input and clone it and put it in multiple locations. And as long as you don't exceed the 16 HD layers per output card. So things like auditoriums where you have IMAG screens and an upstage presentation, instead of having to DA or use up multiple routes, you bring that one IMAG signal in and distribute it internally with the software. So it truly simplifies your wiring and your system configurations. Command and control, exceptionally well positioned for command and control. Lots of windows. The IP interface talks with several security camera protocols out of the box, as well as RTSP. So for control rooms that are doing security, your security cameras can sit on multiple IP inputs, and you can get a camera wall up and running very, very quickly with very few inputs, and it just ties straight into your networks. So physical features, I went through this a little bit. The H2, H5, H9, and H15. There is also an enhanced version of the H15 in case the 10 outputs wasn't enough. The enhanced is where you get the 15 4K outputs. The input modules, that's an input slot, and each of those input card types, any one of those cards can go into those slots. On the front panel, the H2 has a non-interactive front panel. All of the others have an interactive touchscreen. So I'm just going to punch up. Here's the front panel of my H5. There's the multiviewer right on the front panel of my H5. Come on. Sorry, my capacitive fingers are not playing nice. There we go. Touch screens do not like me. But we're going to go through the settings you can get on the front panel. And that panel is the same on the 5, the 9, and the 15. So you see all the device status, the multi-viewer. So you get the multi-viewer on the front panel. So it's in a machine room and you want to confirm something, you can punch up the multi-viewer and see it. Input options. So the primary input cards that we're seeing people use. So we have a quad by DVI, a 4 by HDMI 1.3, 4 by 3G SDI, the HDMI 2.0 DisplayPort 1.2. It has one of each connector on the back, and you choose one or the other, and you do that through the software. I have one in this frame, so I'll show you that. VGA, yes, you can do composite video if you still need to. And also the IPC is the network video card. Currently RTSP, and we'll look at the other two stream types that it currently supports. I have made a request that we talk about adding NDI support, but it does not currently support NDI. Output options, these are the output cards we've already talked about, as well as HDMI and DVI outputs are coming, which means you'll be able to drive actual screens as well, downstage monitors, conference monitors, green rooms, things like that. The multi-viewer is a separate option. So if you don't need a multi-viewer, you don't have to purchase the multi-viewer card. The multi-viewer gives you the 8 input panes, the screen panes, and full motion video. So here again is my multi-viewer. And on here, the top part is the actual LED screen output. And then along the bottom, I have 7 individual input panes. I could add one more physical input pane along the bottom. So that's where those come from. Let me go back to, here we go. Here's the multi-viewer. Coming in the box, you get a power cable, an Ethernet cable, and a factory configured frame. There is, for installers, a second power supply is available as a backup. They are hot swappable. They slide right out of the back. The H2 does not support the hot swap backup power supply. When you turn it on, fans come up to max power, and then they drop down to normal operating. Let's take a look at the front panel. So here's the front panel of my H5, and you see the device connections on there, and you can see the ones that are green are connections that have signal. The yellow SDI is a connector where there's cable, but there's no signal. On the output sides, you see I have no LED tiles hooked up currently, but you do see I have the 2 different types of output cards in here. I have an HDMI and a streaming output from my multi-viewer card. I have the Ethernet, shows you which Ethernet connection, and like my fans are normal, my temperature is normal. So that's the front panel that's also available in the web interface. You can set the IP address from the front panel. And then your connections, so my connections here, I have the Ethernet control going to a local switch, going to a local laptop, just so I don't bog down my network with the stream and all of the video streams. I have the multi-viewer Ethernet out, so the stream out for the multi-view is going to the same switch, and we'll get into how that configures. If you are setting one of these up in an installation, I recommend VLANing the H processor and the multi-viewer to a separate VLAN so that the multi-viewer network stream doesn't bog down the rest of your network. From the front panel, we go to log in and we go from there. So I'm going to switch over here. So this is a live browser view. And I'm just going to go back here to log out. So from the front panel, admin, admin, logging in. And now we're going to start on the configuration page and just go through the different pages in the interface, talk about what you see and what's going on. So right now I have one screen. So that's screen one. This is screen one. It's using these two output cards. This output card is still available for use as a second screen. These screens are not quite the same as screens in Nova LCT, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. One quick mention, so the web interface here configures the way the cards are configured physically, like this basically is a widescreen back in our warehouse. To actually configure the connections of the LED cabinets themselves, there is a custom version of Nova LCT that's available to do that. And I'll show you where that is. It's actually a download from the settings page here. So on here, little gear icon. So the gear icon is the settings. So this is the settings for this output card. And in here, we could put a test pattern up on the output card, adjust the color of that card. Over here on the right-hand side, here we have screen settings. I can rename the screen. So let's call this HDemo. So renamed it here. It has now been renamed everywhere else. Rows and columns are if you are doing, especially if you're doing like monitor walls with the HDMI or DVI cards, you can set up a grid, or you can just drag and drop and free place each of the LED outputs wherever you need to. 3D does support 3D. Over here in color, there's the HDR support. This is color management, and this is true color management. So saturation here, if you turn this down to 0, you have a black and white picture. Color, temperature, hue, brightness, contrast, saturation, several adjustment modes up here to adjust the overall color tone depending on use. Really handy for installations in command and control rooms, classrooms, things like that. So this tab is screen. These settings are per output. So I could put a test pattern on the right-hand output of my LED wall while still running video on the left-hand side. Down here at the bottom are the information for each of the outputs, X, Y position, and how big they are in pixels. And so I've already built this screen. Let's move on to the programming page. So this is where I have inputs. You notice it took a slight pause there, and then it brought up, oh, here are my live inputs. So that's a live input. If I grab my Key Pro and I drop it on that window, there is my live Key Pro. And you see it is a, you saw her blinking and moving. She's actually moving in slow-mo. That's not a frame drop on this end. This demo tape is actually that slow. Back here, I have a computer on the full screen background. And again, because it's a Key Pro, to make another layer, somebody asked me, how do I do that? You drag, drop, move it around. You get indicators when you're like centered. Down here are the layer position and sizing info. Quick layout, Z order adjustment. So if you want to quickly up or down, so bring that and I go, oh, I want him to go down. Let's run him all the way to the bottom. He's now behind, and I bring him to the top. Or I just send him down, and now he's behind. So Z order adjustment on the layers. Both of these layers are just HD sources. It's 1080i coming in. Get rid of a layer. Just click on the X and away it goes. So take this, flip a layer. So you do have, flip. It's not rotate, it's flip. So think front rear, just like many other processors. It's not a rotation, it's flipping horizontal or flipping vertical. At the top of my list on the left here are my active inputs. Then below that are inputs with no signal. And down here is my network input. This is my RTSP stream from PC2. It functions just like an input. So I can drag it where I need. It's another gray background laptop with little different desktop icons. It's a stream. So this is an HDMI out going into a hardware RTSP encode box, and then coming out that a Cat5 and going into the back. Input cropping, let's talk about that real quick. So let's take the KeyPro, go in here and go input crop. So here's the KeyPro. I'm going to do a crop here. So just this bottom section. You can name it. So we're going to call it KeyPro crop 1. Okay. And that is now a sub input to the KeyPro. So here's KeyPro crop 1, which is the sub crop. I dropped it on the background. Let me drop it as a separate layer. So that's the crop. So there's the cropped version and the uncropped version. And you can do multiple crops, name them, and they all show up as separate input versions underneath the original. On the streaming input, same thing, you can crop the streaming input. So if you wanted to remove a title bar, like if we wanted to remove the Windows title at the bottom, we could go ahead and do that. With the Multiviewer card, you get the streaming preview, so it makes all your cropping and things like that really easy. Sorry about that. Presets. I like this screen look. I want to save this as a preset. So down here I go save preset. I give it a name. Demo set 1. And I hit the wrong key. So let's do that one more time. Demo set 1, click new. There's my preset. So if I go here and clear everything, yep. And I go activate preset 1, there's my preset. So you have up to 2,000 presets. They are screen specific. So if I add another screen, presets currently do not span screens. They're only usable on single screens. So they're not just single screens, but they are specific to that screen. You also have preset playbacks. Playbacks are strings of presets. Think of them as macros that play back in order. So they just rotate through a list of presets. Handy for doing things like storefront looks where you want a group of presets to rotate all day long. You can build a string of multiple presets to build a new preset list. Right now I only have that. So let's make one more preset real quick. So let's go clear this. Yep. That's fine. Let's do, sure. And make this full screen. We're going to save this as preset 2. New. So now I have 2 presets. Now if I create a preset list, I can add all of them to the list. I'm going to set it, we'll leave it at the minimum 10 seconds. It's playback number 1. Once you activate a playback, so let me clear the screen. Yep. Activate a playback, you get a big indicator saying, hey, the playlist is going, so you can't do anything else until you stop the playlist. And it's going to go every 10 seconds. It's going to transition back and forth between our 2 presets. So again, they're useful. They're basically macros at this point. And they rotate through your preset options. And then I just click the pause button to take it out. The freeze icon is gone, and now I can do whatever I need in the programming window. I'm going to jump over to the device page. So here's the device page. It looks very similar to what the front panel looked like, but there is more information. So if I click on an input card, I get the properties of the input card over on the right-hand side. So this is HDMI. So it tells me what signal type, what the bit depth is. So this is HDMI, whether I want to convert from limited range to full range. So that's available on these inputs. Also, you can change the connectors into dual link down here. So I can make, take one of the pairs and make it a dual link, which would be an HDMI 1.4 or a 4K 30 pixel space. And it's giving me an error saying you can't perform this because the connector is being used. So I'm using the connector in something, so I can't change it. So I'm using these in the presets. This is the HDMI 2.0 DisplayPort 1.2. This is where you pick which one you're using. So you enable either the DisplayPort or the HDMI side. And then again, it gives me the signal info. This says I'm getting 3840, 2160 at 60. Here's my color space. There's the connector, my color bit depth. So you get all of that information. This is my streaming input, my IP input card. There's 2 ports. They are separate if you want them to be. So I've got them set up as independent IP addresses. And then I set the IP address of, this is the server address that the RTSP stream needs to point to. So I've got this one configured. Here's the 3G inputs. So you see the different, you've got nothing to configure, but it at least gives you, does give you the signal information of what's coming in on the 3G. On the output side, you see the bit depth. So that's your LED cabinet, whether you're running an 8-bit or 10-bit mode. Same thing on the 16 with RJ with the SFPs. So 16 RJ45 with the SFPs. This is the multi-viewer card. And on the multi-viewer card, so the HDMI port is pre-configured at 1920 by 1080 at 60. So it's not changeable. And so there's no settings for it to adjust the output resolution or anything. So it's a fixed 1920 1080p 60. On the Ethernet port, you set up the Ethernet address for your streams, and then down here it gives you set up the URLs for the screen monitors and for the input monitors. So there are 2 different web streams. This one is already set up. The last little bits down here, Temperature is normal. If I click on the fans, shows me the individual fans, they're all normal. My voltage is normal. Power is coming in. It shows me I have 2 power supplies. I only have 1 plugged in. Again, you can run on 1. The second is a backup. Off to the settings page. So settings page has a ton of information in it. We're going to go down the column on the left. Input EDIDs. Straightforward. Set the EDIDs for all the input types that have an EDID. The ones that I can set are the ones that are currently not in use. So you want to do this before you head out, and I unclick that. So here's like, oh, go ahead. So if I go down here and select these, those are the ones that I can work with. Here's the UHD, select that one, I can change that. So input EDIDs, very straightforward. You can upload an EDID file right here. So that's really handy. EDID files are standard files. So if you need to upload an EDID, that's where you can do it. Anyone working with HDR that needs to get HDR from a source, you need to upload an HDR enabled EDID. It's a slightly different EDID than the normal one. And then you're, especially on the Windows side, it'll go, oh, I'm talking to an HDR display. Output EDIDs are basically setting the output pixel size of your displays. And I'm going to demonstrate this with that unused output card. So I'm using these 2 output cards. They're both set at 1008 by 1008. I have a 2:1 aspect ratio wall. I'm using 2 output cards because we're doing things like timing testing and things. So we wanted a seam in the middle at a 59.9 frame rate. If I uncheck this and I select this unused one, so right now it's defaulting to 3840 by 2160 at 60. Let's say I wanted to do 3840 by 1920. And I go apply. Now it's only applying to that one. Now if I go back to the configuration page, there's my one screen. If I do new screen, sure, we're going to call this screen 1 because that's a new name. This is a totally new screen, and I drag this in there. Notice the 3840 by 1920, it grabs the EDID pixel space and goes, that's how big this is. So this output card grabs the EDID setting and then allows you to drop it in as that's our EDID space. And then if I go to programming, yep, I gotta save that. If I go to screen 1, here is our screen 1 pixel space. So now I have 2 screens happening, my H demo and my screen 1. Remember when I said presets are screen specific, no presets here. If I go to the H page, there's my H presets. Inputs are not screen specific. So all the inputs are available on all the screens. Back to our settings page. So that's what the output EDID is for, is to set the pixel space of your output. If I try to change this, it's going to give me a warning now because I've used it in a screen. The IPC management, this is where you set up that network input connection. And if I go new, here are the different protocols. So the ONVIF, the GB28181, and RTSP. The settings change. So if I say this is an RTSP, it'll ask me the URL, the username. If I change it to ONVIF, it's what the protocol is asking for. Once again, I'm using RTSP with a hardware encoder, works perfect. They're not all software RTSP encoders work correctly, but the hardware encoders, all the different hardware encoders I've tried work fine. And I could add, if I set up the second Ethernet port, I could add another one. So I could add another input. And then you have the option, if you're doing like security cameras, this input can support like a 4x4 grid. So it's actually 16 cameras in that stream all at once, and it will auto allocate them. So very handy if you're doing security command and control operation things. User management, super powerful system here. The ability to add a new user. So username, demo, user password, demo 1234. You can put phone numbers and emails in, that just populates in the list. And then whether that person is active or inactive, valid, invalid. And then just by unclicking all and going, okay, I want to do the, let's say I want Multiviewer and programming module. That's it. Okay. So I've created a new user. I'm in Chrome, so it's asking me. So the admin user you cannot delete. However, you can change the password. So for an installation, because admin is the default, I always recommend people go in, create a new admin level password. And change it so it's not the factory default, and then add another admin with your local password, whatever. So you have, a backup administrative thing. And I'm going to show you real quick what demo looks like. So the address of my box, 168.0.138. So it'll get me to the login page. I'm going to log in as demo, and I did demo 1234, login. And this person only has access to the programming page and the Multiviewer page. Well, wait a minute, they have settings page access. They can just go and change it. Well, if you go to the settings page, no, they can't. So the multiple logins, what they have access to is the PDFs for operations, and they have the download for, remember I said there's a special version of LCT to do the LED screen configuration, the connections, all the usual LCT settings. Well, that's available to download. It's on the chassis. It's stored inside the frame. It's not I got to go out to the web and get it. So every H series chassis, it's on board. So it's a very fast download. And the PDFs are also on board. So that's super helpful. As a new operator, you get the unit, you go to this page, you download the manual, you have the full PDF. So here's my regular admin. I have all of the other settings. Here's my demo guy. They can see the Multiviewer, which is the same Multiviewer, and they can see the programming page. And that's all they can get to. So they can't change the EDIDs. They can't destroy the screen connections. They can't break anything, but they could run a show completely with these two pages. I'm just going to disconnect from there. So multiple users, you can make them active, inactive. This is a very well thought out, fairly granular. So even in the settings module, you can give them access to specific things and not other things. Really helpful, really easy to do. Backup. Can you back up the frame? Yes. So you can export a configuration file depending on how many stills you've got stored and how many presets. The file is larger or smaller, just as you would expect. On most of the backups I've done, it's been 30 seconds and we're done. It backs it up as a zip file to wherever your browser downloads. You can take and put that wherever you want. To re-import it, you import the zip file here. You browse to it, import it. It will reconfigure and reboot. And so if you wanted I have a function in this room with this LED on Mondays, and I have something different on Fridays. You could build a Monday and a Friday and just load those as overall configurations. Communication settings, these are the same as the IP settings from the front panel. Firmware update, so you get to see all the different firmware versions of all the cards, all my input and output cards. Firmware on every unit that we've gotten and sent out has been the most current firmware. So they're all, on this one, they're all current. You do have the same with every, screen scaler system out there. The firmware for multiple cards all wants to be the same. The reset, factory reset, save the IP and the EDIDs, or replace everything. The other, so the other options, so you can get rid of the video streaming in the programming page, which will lower your network overhead. You can enable or disable Genlock. I was doing some things last night with Genlock, so that's why it's enabled. And here's your master preset. So you can either do a cut or a fade and one duration. So that's all your preset takes, take at whatever this is set at. The help we've already gone through, that's the PDFs and download the H series version of LCT. If anybody asks, the H series version of LCT works with everything else. It's just the everything else version of LCT doesn't work with the H. And the About Us software version, and the website, and download the logs if you're having an issue with tech support. So let's go to the Multiviewer page, and that's the end of the programming section. So here on the Multiviewer page, I have a screen, but I have two LED screens. So I'm going to shrink this screen. Now, one thing on the Multiviewer page that, so I'm going to drag this screen in. Like many other screen switcher system multiviewers, you can't overlap boxes. So as I try and overlap the box here, it's going, no, I'm not going to let you do that. Same with inputs, you can't overlap inputs. Right now, the maximum number of inputs is 8. I can delete the input frames. I'm going to go look at why. Oh, let's put something on that screen and make that full screen. So there, I wanted something in screen 1 as well. So we have the H demo, we have screen 1. Here's all my inputs with their names along the bottom. I have a slot for one more. So inputs only populate along the bottom of the frame currently. And then I can just quickly repopulate to these different presets. You can customize them. So the customize options gives you how many output windows you want and how many input windows. It's max of 1 row and 8 columns. So that's the current configuration. There are no memories for the Multiviewer. So there's just the one look. Whatever you set up in this page is the look you have, and everybody sees the same look. But you can do multiple screens so you see the actual outputs. Over here on the input side, so I'll show you. So anything that has color in it, those are not used. And then when you've used an input in the input preview pane, notice here on the side, they turn into this black and white. So that's the indication of, oh, I've already got that in one of my 8 input boxes. This is my network input. To use that, I have to just drag it in, because the network input can't live in the same. I can swap inputs between video sources in these boxes, but I can't drop a network input into a video input box. I have to delete the box and put the new box in. So there's my assorted inputs on the bottom. You can only use them once. And my 2 screen outputs. The last bit on the programming is somebody who is probably going to ask, well, is there a preview mode? There is, kind of. So here, if I uncheck this live button, now I get a pre-edit. So if I make a change here, so let's go to my presets, because that's the easy one, to preset 2. So here's preset 2. We look at the multiviewer. Multiviewer is still on the other window. So by unclicking live, you can make changes to the screen. And then when you hit the pre-edit button, those edits go live. So that's the, that's now live. So that's been about 45 minutes. That's all of the main programming tabs. There is a gigabyte of still store memory. There is on-screen display, which are, think of them as kind of downstream keys. There's titles. They support transparency, so you can do like corner bugs and things like broadcasters would want. Let's go briefly to the front panel. So briefly, I'm going to switch over here to my front panel. There we go. So we have a device menu. We have a settings menu. That's IP settings, firmware versions. Advanced menu gives you the factory reset and the update. Language, the about, the multi-viewer, and the key thing is like the device and the multi-viewer are really cool on the front panel. Control software, we did that. So let's go look at just briefly the roadmap for where the H series is going. So there's only 4 more slides, I think. So the H15 enhanced. So 16 output cards, 0.2 billion pixels. Plenty of pixels for any sports books, building facades. That's 16 4K processors. You also have coming HDMI 2.0, HDMI 1.3, single link DVI. So it's a quad DVI, a quad HDMI, and an HDMI 2.0 output card, which would be treated as screens. On the input side, a 12G SDI input card, which will be fantastic for 12G operations locations, and a dual HDMI 2.0 input card where both HDMI 2.0s are available as sources. So basically 2 of those, and you are then looking at taking an 8K input. So either 4 12G or 2 of the dual HDMI 2.0s will give you an 8K screen in. And then control, Ricky will have to address the V unit. The AVMP app, I've got a screenshot of coming up, and the V unit is new even to me. So here's the back of the H15 Enhanced. So lots and lots and lots of RJ45s. Plenty of resolution. So this is 4 8K screens. The input cards, the dual HDMI 2.0 or the 12G. 12G is going to be super popular, especially in the virtual production world. The output cards, so screen outputs, being able to drive actual displays from the same integrated chassis that you're driving the LED from, all with the same singular web interface. The control app is on the left, so they're working on Android and iOS. Currently, you can get the web interface on a phone. So that web interface is HTML5. I have tried it on an iPhone. I've tried it on an iPad. They are enhancing it to make it better for mobile, because currently it is designed for more of a desktop 1920 by 1080. So if you're working on a tablet, it works really well. If you're working on a phone, there is a fair amount of scroll. But the app, I think, is going to be a phenomenal advantage. And I know they're working on it. Ricky might be able to help us with an estimate of when that's going to be available, and the hardware control unit as well. That is the end of my slide presentation. But I do want to give you, I said there was a special offer kind of towards the end, so before the questions. This deck, this PowerPoint deck is available as a PDF. If you email either myself or NovaStar, ask for the presentation, we will send it off as a PDF. And for Evolve customers, we're going to include a $200 discount towards the purchase of an H chassis. So H2, 5, 9, 15, but just by sending us your email and requesting the presentation, you will get a $200 voucher towards a purchase. So that's a thank you for attending. That is the end of my presentation section. So now I'm going to send it back to Ricky, and we're going to handle your Q&A.
Okay, thank you, George. I don't see a question in the chat room. So everybody, if there's any question about H series or anything you're curious or about any information during George's presentation, you can ask him or put a question in the chatting window so I can see your answer. And George, I see Eric is asking your email. So,
yep, I'm going to put my email in for everyone. How are pips handled? So pips are layers. Again, there's 16 2K layers on every output card. Yes, any input can go to any output. So I can take a 4K and scale it all the way down. The only thing I didn't touch down on the minimum wall size, or as far as the LED is concerned, is 600 by 800. We actually ran into that where we had a 578 high because it was 256 by 256. So it's 1024 by 750 or yeah, 756. And we couldn't make it that small. So any output module would show any type of input. Yes, it is literally any input can go anywhere at any time. The CVT10 is a new fiber converter. It's a primary backup SFP input with 10 output ports. So think of it as kind of half of a CVT 4KS. Really handy on a lot of installations where they're only doing HD on a screen. They don't need the full 4K 16 port outputs. Max input bitrate and color space. It depends on the input module. So on device settings. So right now I have the 3G. So they're running 10-bit. And I'm running 10-bit in on the HDMI 2.0, and it supports HDR in. So does it handle communication with multiple walls that might have different receiver cards? Yes. Ricky would have to answer that as far as will it support 444 color space? Ricky.
Yeah.
Okay. Will it support, will the input support 444 color?
Yeah, it supports 444 color.
Excellent. Windows on the multi-viewer, so it's 8 inputs and screens. I don't know. Is there a maximum number of output screens on the multi-viewer, Ricky?
Output window.
Yeah, so screen windows.
No.
So on the multi-viewer, 8 inputs is a maximum currently, but
yeah,
on the output,
there's
it's all the outputs.
input. Yeah. So you can put all of your screens.
Yeah. On an H5, you could have up to 5 LED output modules, which would be a max of 5 screens. So you can put all of those on the multi-viewer. 2 different H
Not only
controllers.
5 actually. Yeah, because if you're using like HDMI output card, you can create multiple screens. So if there are 4 HDMI output, you can create four screens for each output port.
Excellent. 2 different H controllers. So if you had two different controllers, you would want them on the same, you'd want them on the same firmware. And NovaStar support can get you the most current firmware so that they're both current. Does the H series support HTCP? Absolutely. Yes, there is a max size. I have it on one of my slides. I want to say it's 10,420 pixels is the maximum horizontal or vertical. And it's not both at the same time. Ricky, can you correct me on that one?
I don't remember exactly number, but your answer sounds correct. It's quite long.
It's big.
Yeah.
I have on the 16 port, the maximum size is 10,240 wide or tall. Thanks for coming, Eric. So are there any, if there are any more questions, absolutely either Ricky and the team over at NovaStar, who are super supportive, you can email me at the email I posted. Although as they get more technical, I'm going to turn them over to Ricky and the team. But for interface questions and things like that, feel free to contact me. If you would like a online demo, so I can do a TeamViewer demo for people. We've done TeamViewer trainings. We're happy to set up a session. I do have, like I said, this is a live H5 that we're working with today. I'm happy to set up a session where your team can work with the interface and step through the different configurations if you're thinking about using it on a specific project, and we'll try and help you figure out what's the best route to go with. Any plans for output control such as console or button panel? So Ricky, could you talk about the control box and what that's going to do?
Control options is okay, yes. At the end of George's presentation, we mentioned about the AVMP app, which is we will make for both iOS and Android. So it's a app for the templates, like the one on the left. So basically, it's a simplified version of the web control page. It most focus on the precise switching, and you can create deal with the layouts. The layers. But it's made in the templates. It's an app, and the right one, which is a vUnit 2000. It's a control box, similar like a Crestron device. So I'll make it at the control center. So they will have the I/O outputs or IF outputs and relays with the RS-232 or different multiple output port options. So you can use that as a control center to control both your LD controller, maybe your some lightings, audios, some turn on, turn them on, off, some other device. this is something new we're going to do in the next step. And I see Jake's question, is there a TCP/IP commands for programming control and third-party software? Yes, and we can provide the control protocol for the H series. That's definitely something we can do. For Lee's question, sorry, we do not support NDI inputs currently.
So thank you all. If there are any additional questions, feel free to email us. We're here at Evolve. We're really excited with the platform. We've had a great deal of success with it so far. And you can see that on our end, we can see that, especially with the roadmap going forward, it's going to become more powerful and more usable. It is by far the most flexible, large pixel space LED controller NovaStar's put out. And the web interface is fantastic to work with. Super smooth, super easy to work with, and very, very user-friendly. So now I'm going to turn it back to Ricky.
Okay, thank you, George. I just sent a picture and a link, which is we built it on our own server. So it's a net disk. So when you log in, so you'll see all the training or like specifications, training materials. Let me see if I can do a screenshot so you can see how it works. Okay, so for the link, I just sent to all of you. So after you log in, you just need to enter the username, which is NovaStar, and no password needed. After you sign in, so it's a basic software firmware version and products specification menus, and just like if you need the training materials, the tutorial videos for any of our controller, for especially for the H series, which we're talking about today. It's under the all-in-one controller, and this is H series, and you can see all the tutorial videos, basic operation, and some operation for a specific function. So that's all something you can get from this net disk. It's open to all of our customers. Okay. See. See if there are any questions haven't been answered. Okay, for Lee's latest questions. So we do not have that library for our config files.
On Lee's question on install, we have installed on, our customers have installed the product, different H series in several different house of worship venues. And it's currently installed in one virtual production LED volume. Not a problem. And I think that looks like it's going to wrap up for today. Thank you all for coming. Thank everybody for attending. Everybody have a great weekend. I'd like to thank NovaStar for their support and for including me. And we appreciate everything that we've accomplished working with them.
Thank you, George. Thank you all.